So welcome everybody. Today is our fourth live class in the Accelerated Growth Intensive that's running in 2019 in the summer. Now we have not recorded the other classes and we may not record any other classes. The reason I'm recording part of this class at least tonight is because we have at least 3 or 4 people that aren't going to be here for the whole time. So I'm not going to record the part where you're actually talking about your personal experiences, but I'm going to record a few things because I think it will be helpful for those people who are missing the class tonight. And I want to start with a note on pacing because this is usually about the time in this program where I have a few people who start feeling like they're falling off the wagon. And people can react to that in many different ways, but the one way that I want to just encourage you not to react is by beating yourself up. You're not alone, and this is a very typical pattern that happens when you do any kind of process. Usually we start out excited, and we do maybe the first couple of exercises, and we may even have a few ahas and everything's great, but we've got life happening around us, and so then we start misstepping. Maybe we miss a few exercises, we get behind, we get frustrated with ourselves, then it seems overwhelming to catch up, then everyone seems really far ahead. And so I want to share with you a few things. First of all, I'm going to tell you, don't ever beat yourself up for being behind in this program because, number one, honestly, you could catch up in one day. The videos are all very short. They're 10 to 15 minutes. The exercises, literally, I took a retreat through 2/3 of this program in one day when we went to Palm Desert about a month ago. So you can go through the stuff pretty fast. And remember, you have one-on-one time with me, and I can catch you up too. We're holding your hands through every piece of this program. So please don't get discouraged if you feel like you're getting behind, because the pace has to be yours. You are not going to do very high-quality work if you're caught up in a story about judging yourself about how you're doing the work, because that's not going to help you. That's just going to make it worse. So you want to just, first of all, take this at your own pace. The purpose is that you get insights and feel a sense of progress. And as many participants in this program have told me so far, they have gotten tons of ahas just from taking the first steps. And the first time that we went through this program last year with just some of the people in the Aspire program, some people just did the trigger log, and they were so they had so many little epiphanies from just doing the trigger log that they just sort of stopped and faded away there. And I didn't have the program structured enough to kind of keep everybody on board through the whole way. So this time I have it structured enough to keep everybody on board through the whole way. You have one-on-one time with me so that, you have a lot of ways to get caught up if you get behind. But keep in mind that even if you don't complete every step of the program, the way this program works, it's called an intensive for a reason. And we are taking you straight through from one epiphany to another epiphany to another epiphany to another epiphany. When you have an epiphany, usually you feel a burst of clarity, and often you're going to feel a sense of relief. Many of us are scared about our epiphanies, and I've actually had a few people express that to me as they've turned their homework in. And the other thing that you should keep in mind is that resistance is part of this process. So because you're going to have epiphany after epiphany after epiphany, but because it's also a little bit scary, and you are going to find yourself forgetting things. So that's kind of one way that we resist. We just forget it. Our brain doesn't think it's really important, etc. Then just acknowledge it and work with it. Just understand that this is part of the process. You're going to get a lot out of this program no matter how many steps you take. But then the other thing is you're always going to have the opportunity to complete it, because my commitment to you is to work through it every step of the process until I get you through the end, because to me, I really want to get every single one of you all the way through the end of the process. I'm going to get a personal benefit from that, so I am very committed to it. So don't worry about it. Don't worry how behind you are. And I wanted to say that before we did our round robin. So I'm going to now move forward to our agenda today. We're going to have our round robin check-in, and then we're going to talk about the lessons that we got from the empowerment log and our next steps. So for the round robin, keep in mind that you're always allowed to pass, that you never have to share anything you aren't comfortable sharing. And what I'm going to ask each of you is, what is one interesting insight that you've had? And what I'd really like you to try to describe, and we're going to turn off the recording, so you're not going to be describing it on the recording. But what I'd really like you to try to just, if you had an aha, I'd like you to try to describe to people how your aha felt and how it changed you. And so I am going to go in, I'm going to turn off the recording first. Okay, so gosh, for those of you that were not on the call, I wish you could have heard what everybody shared, but just to maintain privacy, I couldn't have it on the recording. But those were great insights. And I would say, just to kind of summarize, a lot of people kind of had the insight that when they identified the unmet need, they saw examples where they weren't getting the need met, and they saw how they were being triggered. But when they actually looked for examples where they were getting the need met, they often found that they were dismissing it. They weren't taking it in. And so that's a huge aha, and that's kind of the aha that we're looking for you to have. So there's a pattern that happens with unmet needs, right? So the first thing I want to remind you all, and I'm going to keep reminding you of the basics of this program, because one of the things, and I think some of our people that spoke up, because they just because they hadn't thought about it before the class, they sort of forgot. And I did the same thing. Like, I have had one-on-ones with many of you, and a couple of you I had one-on-ones with today, and so I remembered your aha. But those of you that I had one-on-ones with yesterday or last week, I've already forgotten what your aha was. And I bet you did too, and I'll forget some of my own epiphanies. So one of the things that we do is forget our epiphanies. So one of the things I'm going to do on this call is keep reminding you of what we're doing, because one of the ways that your brain sort of tries to, separate from all this, because it's just all too much sometimes, is by just forgetting. So the number one thing that we want you to do is have an intact needs pyramid. No holes in your pyramid. Your Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid, if all your needs are met, you feel a sense of well-being. And in that sense of well-being, it is very easy to be kind to other people. It's easy to let childish behavior just roll off your shoulder. It doesn't mean that you allow people to walk all over you. You still talk to people about things. You still set boundaries. You still tell people not to do things. But instead of telling people, don't do that to me, that's really stupid, that's really disrespectful, you say, excuse me, I just want to let you know that, your suitcase is on my foot, and would you mind moving it? And it doesn't even bother you, because you're like, well, they didn't mean it. They didn't even know, probably, right? So you're not having a story in your head that says, oh, this is so obvious. Why don't they know that they're disrespecting me? Why aren't they treating me right? If someone's not treating you right and you have all your needs met, then typically what you're going to do is just ask them to treat you differently. You just have no problem speaking up. So we talked about standing for yourself. You have no problem standing for yourself because you have no negative energy about it. You have no inner stories about it. You're like, I need to raise this person's rates, and I'm afraid that they're going to have a cow about it, and so I really don't want to have this call. And if they don't agree, that means they don't value me. And so now we have a lot of energy, and so having those calls to raise people's rates is really difficult. But if we feel completely valued, then we feel so good and such a sense of well-being that we can get on the phone and say, hey, I want to let you know that, we've been working together a long time, And over the last several years, my rates have gone up. And I haven't raised your rates, but we're getting to the point where we're going to need to raise your rates just to get you kind of in line with everybody else. I'm not going to raise you all the way to what other people are paying, but I'm going to give you about a 30% increase. And so that'll make your rate go from here to here. And I'm totally willing to work with you on anything you need in that, but I just wanted to let you know. And notice that my voice is really calm. And then if they say, what? Oh my gosh, I can't even afford blah, 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 then I would just sit and listen. And I would go, gosh, I understand. Well, maybe we can do this over the course of the next few months. What do you think about that? And they might go, okay, I see. And then they start feeling heard, and kind of we do the thing that one of the people on our call mentioned, kind of giving them, they're making sure they feel heard and important and everything. And we have no problem doing any of that, and the call just goes really smoothly, and it gets resolved however it gets resolved. But there's no drama. There's no inner resentment. There's no embarrassment. None of that happens. That's what your life is like when all your needs are met. And so imagine how effective you are in that case. You're not only effective or you're happy. So the key to happiness, the key to effectiveness is having all your needs met, having an intact needs pyramid. So the goal of everything we do is to identify your unmet needs and get them met. And the reason that I've been having you go through all these processes is because we need tools to help us identify our unmet needs and get them met. And the trigger log is the best tool that you can use to identify your unmet needs. And the empowerment log is the best tool to help you see that you're actually empowered to get your needs met. Because one of the reasons we don't get our needs met is because we don't think that we have the power to do it. So the empowerment log helps you begin to see, wait a minute, I say I want this, yet when it comes to me, I dismiss it, I judge it, I block it. Why is that? That's very weird. So there's some patterns that people go through when they have unmet needs. And here are some of the patterns that I've noticed in all the years that I've worked with clients. This is what I see happen every time there's an unmet need. So I'm to the point now where when I discover that I have an unmet need, I automatically know that these three things are going on. And even if I don't feel that these three things are going on, I tell myself these three things are going on. So now I have to find how they're going on, but I know they're going on. So the first thing is whatever your unmet need is, you're not giving it to yourself. So if you don't feel accepted, you are judging yourself. If you don't feel validated, you're dismissing yourself. If you don't feel heard, then you're not hearing yourself. You may not have a very clear idea of what you want. If you're not feeling valued by others, chances are you're not valuing yourself. So if you're not feeling included and loved by others, chances are you're not being a best friend to yourself. So a lot of what we do when we start working on getting your needs met is developing a practice of giving myself whatever it is I think I don't need. So one of the examples that I have from my journey is when I realized I had an unmet need for reassurance. And I realized that sometimes I feel lonely and scared, and I feel like I can't turn to anybody, and there's nobody who's strong and big and going to tell me that everything's okay, and I just desperately feel like I need that. And so when I uncovered that I had an unmet need for reassurance, I said to myself, well, that means I'm not giving it to myself. So I went into hyper self-reassurance mode. And what that means is that anytime anything started happening in my life that made me feel a little anxious or a little worried, I would start a self-talk tirade of, you are going to be fine. This is okay. You've got this. Anything I could think of that I would tell my daughter if I wanted to reassure her or anybody else. So I just started reassuring myself. When I was worried about, one of my big worries is when someone I love is out at night and I'm worried that they might get in an accident or not come back safely. I tell myself there's a 99% chance that they're going to come back safely, and I've been able to get myself to go to sleep and just be fine when people are out because I tell myself that statistic, and somehow that reassures me. So I've been really actively working on self-reassurance. If your unmet need is to be heard, then one exercise I'll have people do is sit down and ask themselves, what do I want? What matters to me? Maybe to write in a journal, but to really pay attention to what matters to them. And so that's a way that you can hear yourself, okay? If you feel like you're lonely and you don't feel like you have love and friendship from others, one of the things you can begin working on is becoming a best friend to yourself, being with yourself. I remember recently practicing that with myself, going for a walk and sitting in nature and just sitting quietly, looking at nature and drinking it in and going, here I am with myself, having a wonderful time. And so kind of being with yourself as if, having conversations with yourself in your head maybe, but just being a companion to yourself. So that's number one. Number two, and this is what a lot of people said on the call was their big insight, and that is you're blocking it when it comes from others. You're either dismissing it or you're judging it. So the second thing that you can do is you can consciously and graciously receive it when it comes from other people. So it's like when someone gives you a compliment, don't dismiss it, just say thank you. When somebody when someone says, oh, thank you, you did a wonderful job, I really appreciate it, then you say, thank you, I'm glad you noticed, I really worked hard to make this nice for you. Okay? So number three, you usually have, and this does not happen all the time, but it does happen many times. You have one person in your life who causes you the most aggravation and pain because they refuse to meet this need for you. And in your mind, they are the one person who should be giving this to you. Often this shows up as your spouse or your boss, because when you were very young, it was your parent. So it's kind of whoever you replaced as your parent. That person will never, ever, ever meet the need, so you need to let go of them giving it to you, and that sometimes takes some mental gymnastics. I realize we're getting to the end of our time, so I'm going to try to go a little bit faster through the last couple of slides. So the three things that you can do to start getting your needs met is to give it to yourself, receive it graciously no matter where it comes from, and let go of the one person. Understand that you'll never get this need met from them. So I'll give you a quick example. I had a client who would come to me complaining about his boss and complaining that every time he went into his boss never taught him anything. He was a horrible mentor. And in one of our sessions, I said, well, I guess you're not going to get your mentoring from him. And he just looked at me and he said, oh. And what that did is it made him realize that this boss that he had wasn't where he was going to get his mentoring, but he really needed mentoring. And it opened the door for him to realize that he could get mentoring still. He just wouldn't get it from the person who was technically his boss. A lot of people in relationships, they want their spouse to be their soulmate and to be the one that hears them all the time and that gives them everything, and that never happens. And when you set your expectations really high that your spouse meets all your needs, you're always going to be disappointed. So that's why it's really important to have healthy, intimate relationships outside of your key relationship with your spouse so that you can get a lot of your emotional needs met and there's not so much pressure on your spouse to deal with your expectations and your disappointment in them. Okay? So we'll talk about this more as we progress, but those are kind of the three keys. And so what is it that we want you to do? So this is just kind of a summary here. The purpose of the empowerment log is to help you see the power you have in getting your needs met. So I pretty much just told you all of this. Your trigger log helps you identify your unmet need. Your empowerment log helps you see these things that we're pointing out. So what's this week's homework? To empower yourself. This week, your homework is to actively work on doing everything you can to get more of your needs met. And I would focus in on the one that you've identified. So if you've worked on acceptance, I want you to work on getting more acceptance, giving it to yourself, receiving it when it comes, and letting go of the one person who you feel always judges you, letting go of the expectation that they accept you. One thing you can also do is make a list of the things you're doing to get this need met, because that will also be empowering for you, because it will remind you of things that you can do to get the need met. Okay? So this is just sort of a reminder. You've got your flow chart here. I've got it grayed out. This is kind of where we're at, step 5, reflecting on our empowerment log. You don't have to do your reflection paragraph yet. I'll probably have you do your reflection paragraph next week, so you have a little bit of time to practice getting your needs met, and then you can reflect on that. So I have the needs exercise here that we did last week, and I think I'm going to send this out. So for those of you that wanted to know these questions are really good because they help you see how important it is to have your needs met. And it also helps you begin to see where your points of influence are and how you can take control of getting a need met. So answering these questions about the need will really help you. So if you're listening to the video, you can just pause the video and take a screenshot of the questions. And then this is a picture of the empowerment log. And this is what reflection paragraph number 2 would be if any of you want to go ahead. So I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, I got to slip off. We're past the hour. We are done. I have one more little thing here that you can take a look at for your homework. Again, if you're watching the video, because I will send it out to you all, you can take a screenshot of this, but it has a few questions that sort of prompt you about what you're doing to get the need met. And that will empower you more and accelerate the process, but we'll consider this bonus work, okay? So I want you all, I'm not going to have you do a final round robin. I just want you all to know that I really appreciate all the work that you've done so far, no matter how you've come. Even if you're behind, you've got plenty of time to catch up. Just maybe spend some time this weekend listening to some of the videos, working on a trigger log and an empowerment log, and see what insights you get. You all have time with me. Those of you that already have packages of coaching sessions with me, I'm giving you bonus coaching sessions for this program. So everybody has time with me. Take advantage of it. If you haven't had a coaching call with me recently, schedule one in the next week or two to make sure that I'm right there to help you kind of go through this whole process. Thank you so much for being on the call, and I look forward to talking with you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.